My whole life and all of my priorities and values was informed by being a Black woman in a predominantly white and affluent city that lived in a segregated neighborhood. My work evolved from Black business advocacy and fighting for economic inclusion and housing opportunities to reparations.
We know that reparations was initially promised hundreds of years ago, but none of them materialized. What did materialize was the concerted, planned effort to build a nation and a society based upon racism and discrimination, based upon separation and segregation. So when Robin Simmons asked if we would become involved in the reparations movement, it really was a no-brainer.
We're seeing more understanding that reparations is far more than just a cash benefit, that equity and inclusion has not been enough, that affirmative action and other federal policies have not closed our racial divide. Housing was the most consistent and most in-demand form of repair from our community, and that's what led with our priorities in the city of Evanston.
Being a real estate agent, I can see the differences in value of the homes that are in the previously red-lined zone versus that same house if you put it outside of there. You know, that whole generational wealth passed down just isn't there. And not just here in Evanston, that's like almost anywhere in the United States. It was like, what can we do to address this?
I saw that the laws, the policies, institutional practices were intentionally anti-Black, and that we would have to have a policy that was just as targeted and intentional.
Our laws are not set up to allow for racial repair. It became like a realistic problem for me to solve, really just trying to dig in to find reasons why it hasn't worked in the past in order to try and deconstruct that and figure out how we can make it work in the future. You hear people talk about redlining a lot. Well, here in Evanston, you actually had a city plan where the zoning map was explicitly laid out to try and disfavor certain types of housing in certain neighborhoods, which the type of housing tended to be lived in by people of color. There were lots of other examples, but that formed the evidence that we need to say, okay, we now want to repair these instances on the basis of race, because we know specifically that this harmed Black residents.
Using a narrowly tailored framework for reparations is going to be most viable so that the redress or the repair is in direct correlation to the harm. By November of 2019, our city, Evanston, Illinois, had passed Resolution 126R19. It established our reparations committee, the fund, a $25,000 direct benefit that can be used to build wealth through home equity or some type of housing-related measure. I get to run into families all the time that tell me, I got my check, or you should come see my new kitchen. Also seeing families that chose to give their benefit to their children so their children could buy their first home. This is what is really thrilling about the work. When I retired from office, I decided I would not run again and that my life's work would be dedicated to reparations. I saw that there was an ongoing demand from other local leaders like myself all throughout the nation. And so I launched FirstRepair. We're a small not-for-profit. We have been able to work with many other communities that are taking their first step towards repair as well. We work directly with cities and task force, foundations, and organizations to think about their own practice and how they may begin to lead in repair and live a life of repair.
When it comes to local reparations, one of the reasons I think that it works is because these are people that we know, people that we care about. And I think sometimes when we talk about national projects, it gets to be very abstract. But when it's your friends and your relatives and your neighbors, then we have to say, wait a second, what has happened? And how can we possibly tolerate that?
It is Black people who, for the first time, are receiving something that they thought they would never receive from any kind of system or any kind of structure. There is something very humane, and there's something very honest, and there's something very divine that has happened here. And when you get to that point, when you have communities that begin to have people begin to see beyond their own silo, you're working toward beloved community.
Amen to that.